This is not The Truman Show or The Handmaid's Tale or Groundhog Day. This is Australia in 2021, where we've learned nothing, apparently, from the traumas of 2020. South Australia will now join the lockdown mania in about an hour and a half from now, based on just 5 cases. 5 cases in South Australia, 1 new case today. Lockdown has been extended a week in Victoria after a baker's dozen of new cases, and the Victorian border's been slammed shut even tighter, making it almost impossible for Victorians to return from New South Wales. And no good news for New South Wales either, as authorities warn people not to even chat with their neighbours after another 78 cases. Yes, the state premiers are inflicting enormous harm on their citizens, communities and economies because of their political obsession with zero COVID, because they think it's the lesser of 2 evils. This morning we had 3 of them going live with media conferences all at once. Daniel Andrews extending his lockdown in Melbourne, Stephen Marshall locking down his state from Adelaide, and Gladys Berejiklian giving the latest on her lockdown from Sydney. What compelling viewing. What a mess. This is how we discover our fate these days, awaiting daily edicts from these live broadcasts. All the premiers are aiming for zero COVID, but they all know that's unsustainable. The question is, when can we switch to a different response, a better, smarter, kinder, more sustainable response than this? Now, as you know, we've been through it so many times with so many experts over so many months on this program who tell us we can't stay at zero COVID. The virus will be endemic. It already is endemic in this planet, on this planet. We have to learn to live with it. And if you watch this show and not rely on the sensationalist media or the public broadcasters, you'll also know that the people where the overwhelming majority of fatalities occur in aged care are now vaccinated. And 3/4 of the over 70s have had at least 1 jab, giving considerable protection. And we are then in an infinitely better place to deal with this virus than we were a year ago. This doesn't mean let it rip. This is not some choice between 2 extremes. This means take care, socially distance, isolate cases and slow the spread. Flatten the curve, remember, and continue as quickly as possible with the vaccine rollout, even for all the healthy young adults who are extremely unlikely to get seriously ill. Now, given where we are now, we should not be facing closed state borders, states locked down, kids kept out of school. All this is over the top for us now. In South Australia, shops are shut 450 kilometres and more from the nearest cases in Adelaide. In Victoria, a so-called snap lockdown will now go for at least 12 days. And yes, in New South Wales, as I said, we've been told not to chat.
Whilst it is in human nature to engage in conversation with others, to be friendly, unfortunately, this is not the time to do that. So even if you run into your next door neighbour in the shopping centre, in the Coles, whilst you're at Coles or Woolworths or Aldi or any other grocery shop, don't start up a conversation. Now is the time for minimising your interactions with others, even if you've got a mask.
Eyes on the ground, no chatting with friends and neighbours. I would have thought we need to just give each other a bit of encouragement at the moment while being careful about the virus. It's all a bit much, isn't it? It's about infantilising the population. It's about the nanny state. It's about control. Government knows best, and to hell with personal responsibility. And if you reckon that's bad, try catching up with your boyfriend or girlfriend in South Australia.
Can you visit a friend or an intimate partner?
No.
You can't visit an intimate partner, there's no bubble or anything?
No.
Well, if you can't catch up with your partner, I suppose you're no longer very intimate. So all's good, hey? Seriously, it's right about now that we've got to either scream out of the lounge room windows of this nation or at least have a decent laugh at some of the social media clips.
I want to break free. I want to break free. I want to break free from your lies. You're so self-satisfied. I don't need you.
Queen has never looked better, have they? I love the eyebrows keeping time. Might have to show that one to you later again in the program as well. But there are no encouraging signs from the politicians. Have a listen to this.
We hate putting these restrictions in place, but we believe we have just one chance to get this right. This is very, very fast moving. We understand there'll be lots of pain points right across the state.
Yeah, he hates to do it. There's no choice. They always say there's no choice, there's no option. And he actually called it a fast-moving outbreak as he announced one new case today and locked down his state, did Stephen Marshall. Certainly Marshall is fast-moving. Across the border, the lockdown king Daniel Andrews, well, he reckons Victorians are now the lockdown champions.
If there was another alternative, if there was another choice that we could responsibly make, then of course we would. But I think Victorians, having been through all that we've been through, we know what it's like to be locked down for months, and we're all, I think, committed to playing our part to avoid that happening.
Yeah, so here we go again. Andrews trumpeting his strategy of locking down early and hard in order to avoid longer lockdowns, as he at once announces a longer lockdown. You couldn't make this stuff up, could you? Many in the media cheer this stuff. They actually promote the Victorian government's months of lockdowns and more than 800 deaths as the gold standard.
How we've got here, where we've now got half the population of Australia effectively locked down, is that one limo driver in New South Wales was not tested and not apparently required to test by the authorities. It was vice versa. It was on his head. So that is how it all started. And then we have a situation where it appears the New South Wales government thought that what had happened in Victoria last year and the lessons that were learned there did not apply to it. And so the virus got out of control in Sydney and leaked out into Victoria and now to South Australia as well. And we've got half the country in lockdown.
Yeah, lock down harder, follow Victoria, they say. Well, whether or not a limo driver is vaccinated or wearing a mask or is tested, and there's good arguments to say a limo driver in this situation should have had all those three happening. But even then, he or she or someone else can still get infected and still pass it on. That's just the reality. The virus is highly contagious. You cannot pretend it away or sweep it away with your emergency powers. The more panicky the premiers, the more media they seem to have on side. I guess media jobs and lifestyles are hardly under much threat, are they? So we have untold pain now for so many people, half the country, 13.5 million people. People paid to sit at home, businesses crippled, families torn apart, education's interrupted. All because we're not ready yet to accept that we have to live with a horrible new virus that will be with us for many, many years to come. If we can't say goodbye to rampant lockdowns with the most vulnerable already vaccinated, most of the second most vulnerable group, the over 70s, protected to some degree, and vaccines rolling out for everyone else, when can we? The idea of waiting until all healthy young adults and children who face next to no risk from the virus are vaccinated is just too much. As we've heard from the experts, spring is what we should be looking forward to, not another 6 months or more. And we need to start reshaping our approach now. Lockdowns, remember, were supposed to be a last resort. That's what the so-called National Cabinet signed up to. Clearly it was spin, clearly it was bunkum, because we remain victims of our own success, pretending we can go with zero COVID until there's no risk at all. That won't happen. COVID is here. We can minimise the risk, manage the risk, but it can't be eliminated forever. We need politicians to focus on other risks, the wasted years of the young, the damage to schooling, the crippling financial costs, the mental health strains, the missed medical appointments and medical treatments, the broken businesses, the millions of people on sit-down money, the debt, and the lack of liberty and removal of personal responsibility. All these issues are important too. All these threats are real too. But the zero COVID obsession is pushing them right out of the conversation. Scott Morrison, a nation turns its worried eyes to you.